President Trump has named his enemies list, and in the past few weeks, the DOJ has been on a tear against them. We followed several indictments, and now there's a grand jury impaneled looking at charges against John Bolton, a former Trump aide. Trump has basically tried to turn the DOJ into a sort of selective prosecution operation. That, of course, is unlawful if defense counsel has the evidence that Trump was basically ordering these cases regardless of the facts and that the facts don't support the charges. Well, on that score, the Trump side has gotten a blow by his own admissions and confessions because he directed the DOJ to target named opponents in public. This is the larger list that we've shown you some versions of this. You can see how many people have already faced DOJ actions. But as for the public call, which of course hurts Trump's case, well, it turns out that was an accident. He wanted to keep at least certain orders secret. Wall Street Journal had this bombshell about how he's taken control of the prosecutions, that he has been pushing Attorney General Pam Bondi, traveling together. And while she does try to avoid discussing cases directly with Trump, they report, she does still regularly visit the White House. Trump continues to complain about the pace of cases to aides. And even after that rather thin and now controversial indictment of the former FBI director, James Comey, he still says Bondi's moving too slow. Other prosecutors are investigating the former CIA director, John Brennan, and the very FBI director that Donald Trump picked to replace James Comey, Christopher Wray. As we reported earlier this week, drawing on the Journal, Donald Trump's infamous demand that Pam Bondi investigate and finish these charges against now two of the three people that were charged, Comey and James, with Schiff being the other named. Well, the Journal reported he meant that to be a secret directive, a private message, but accidentally posted it on the internet. We're joined by Justice Department reporter from the Wall Street Journal, Sadie Gurman. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
What is the significance of what you found from your reporting and sources, that Donald Trump is calling these shots, breaking rules, and I guess in some cases accidentally leaking or telling on himself?
Yes, well, what I think is very interesting is that, Trump hasn't really changed. Over the years I've covered DOJ, I've seen him call upon his attorneys general time and time again to go after his rivals, show leniency to his allies. And what's different now is the leadership of DOJ. In the first term, you had people who would, a shared sense of where the ethical lines and the norms stood. And they knew that if they used the legal system in a way that could be perceived as weaponized, that could come back and hurt them once the opposing party takes office again. So they thought that would become a cycle, and they managed to placate Trump. But in this term, that doesn't seem to be happening quite as much.
You mentioned a cycle. Some of them may have honestly believed that the DOJ is not supposed to work that way. And as an attorney, if there isn't good evidence in a case, you have an ethical obligation not to bring it.
That's right. And what we've seen in this term so far is, in addition to dozens of prosecutors being fired for their work on investigations involving Trump, we also see many resigning, voluntarily because they're concerned that they'll be asked to do something that's unethical and they could be disbarred.
When Trump did post online this message that said Pam, referring to Attorney General Pam Bondi, and then his demand for these prosecutions, when you started to get the clues or the indication from your reporting that this was a mistake, what did you think? Did you say, oh, wow, we got a big story here, and of course you do your best to verify it? Walk us through that, because it seemed very damning.
Right. Well, I mean, there were some early indications that this might have been a misfire, including the fact that the post started, was directed to her. It was started with Pam, and it was a message to her. And so in addition to being concerned about a president and the attorney general communicating on direct messages about important investigations, it was just kind of incredible that, we've seen him make these public calls so many times for investigations that he had actually intended for this one to be private was significant.
You report that AG Bondi was very concerned about that message, that she called the White House, which is still, of course, they're the boss, but to voice her concerns. Tell us about that.
So after that happened, Trump was surprised to learn that the message was actually public. And then Bondi started calling the White House, calling aides. She was upset. And at some point, Trump agreed to issue a second message publicly saying that Pam Bondi is doing a great job.
And she was upset just because it affected her standing, or also she is a former state AG. She does have some experience that if we put aside the question of whether these are valid charges, she certainly knows, perhaps better than others, that having a public political call to charge them before doing it makes it harder to win those cases.
Right. And what our reporting showed is that Bondi has really walked a delicate line with Trump. You know, she travels with him. She goes to the White House multiple times during the week, but she has been careful. She's been intentionally not trying to talk to him about investigations. And it's interesting that she's pointed out to him that most of the decision making in prosecutions is left to the deputy attorney general. So she's kind of taking herself out of the equation and still fulfilling that role as the attorney general, who is a cabinet member, who is advancing the president's agenda.
Finally, Donald Trump has gone after a lot of different independent news outlets in different ways. He is suing the Wall Street Journal. Does that affect how you approach your job, your reporting?
No, it doesn't. Simply put.
Sometimes the answer is simple.